So Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey has finally had its first wave of reactions and reviews, and they are rave. And if I had to summarize all that in one sentence, I would say this: Nolan's The Odyssey is as epic a film as Homer's Odyssey is a poem. Safe to say, Nolan's gamble has paid off. And if I'm being honest, there were a few skeptics who had issues with the lack of realism in a fictional poem by a man named Homer, who may or may not have existed. These people who complained about a couple of non-white characters and the fact that the language in the movie is very American English, but come on, it's not as if the Odyssey was written in elevated, polished British English. It was written in Homeric Greek, for God's sake. But after the release of the movie, it seems like such skeptics and haters have fallen in line in praise of the movie, which is being described as a world-class cinematic experience, a filming feast. In fact, some critics have even compared Nolan's Odyssey with Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies, and even equated the two IPs, not just compared. And in this video, we're going to explore exactly that, the rave early reviews that the Odyssey has been receiving. The film has had its London premiere and early screenings, and critics, pundits, and people from the film press have already started calling it one of the biggest cinematic events of the year. But then again, we know that when it comes to a Nolan film, this kind of noise is not exactly new. But the interesting thing here is that the kind of praise it's receiving and the uniformity in the praise. Like, apart from the movie's scale, IMAX, battle scenes, and uber grand visuals, people are also talking about how this is one of the first Nolan movies in a long time to deal with profound emotions and tropes like loss, leadership, and loneliness of a man trying to return home after war. But most curiously, critics and fans have also praised the film's extremely well fleshed out horror aspect, which elevates Odyssey above an oversimplified notion of Nolan made another big movie. This one goes beyond that. As you may know, The Odyssey is Nolan's adaptation of Homer's ancient Greek epic poem of the same name, and it follows the long, troubling, and adventurous journey of a hero named Odysseus, who is played by Matt Damon in the movie, as he tries to return to Ithaca, to his home, after the Trojan War. The story has the usual mythic ingredients we all know from the poem, and you'll find all sorts of gods, monsters, and witches. But you'll also find other emotions and traits like the effects of temptation on man, and how grief changes him, and of course, the long road back to his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus. But you know what? These emotions like temptation and grief, well, they become characters in their own right, all thanks to Nolan's masterful storytelling. Anne Hathaway plays Penelope, Tom Holland plays her son Telemachus, while Zendaya plays Athena, and one man who's bound to steal every scene he's in is Robert Pattinson, who's basically Penelope's sniveling suitor, called Antinous. Then there's the other greats like Lupita Nyong'o, Charlize Theron, Samantha Morton, John Leguizamo, Himesh Patel, Elliot Page, and you've even got Jon Bernthal as Menelaus, among several others. So yeah, as the trailers rightly portrayed, this one's not a sword and boat or a mere sword and sandal film. Nolan's Odyssey is as much an epic film as was Homer's Odyssey an epic poem. Nolan is really doing justice to one of the oldest adventure stories in Western literature. In an interview, Nolan said that his intent behind making the movie was to bring the A-budget, big Hollywood cinematic feel and IMAX production to mythological work that had previously been done. For instance, the works of Ray Harryhausen. In his words, as a filmmaker, you're looking for gaps in cinematic culture, things that haven't been done before. So this was clearly a gamble, and he may have actually pulled it off. The Guardian's Roundup described the first response as largely ecstatic, with critics calling the film huge, emotional, and visually overwhelming. One of the big repeated points was that this movie felt like the culmination of Nolan's obsession with IMAX. Fandango's Eric Davis called it an absolute triumph, and basically said it felt like everything Nolan had worked toward with IMAX had led to this film. And this is a very big statement because Nolan has been obsessed, for the lack of a better term, with this format for years. I mean, from The Dark Knight to Dunkirk to Oppenheimer, IMAX is the only route the man wants to take. But here, the difference was that the Odyssey was shot entirely with IMAX cameras, instead of a few sequences of major moments being shot with them. The whole damn thing is made on IMAX cameras, so of course, if you can catch this one on a 70mm IMAX, you're good to go, my friend. Like, we know that Nolan's entire filmmaking identity has always been about making the audience feel the scale. Like, you see it visually, but you almost feel it physically too, as if you've become immersed in it, in his vision. And this movie needed that grand scale, as Odysseus' journey was such. He had been thrown across the world, against the sea, against gods, against monsters, and against his own failures. And I totally agree with Collider's Perry Nemiroff when they say, it's sincerely hard to imagine any other filmmaker on the planet being able to bring that source material to the screen with this much scale, scope, and heart. Plus, Matt Damon Nolan himself called this one of the hardest and most challenging films he'd ever done, and he's been to Mars and back. Another great aspect of the movie that the critics have appreciated is how it feels like it was made 80 years ago, because everything was done in camera as far as possible. If you saw 1,000 people, then 1,000 people were actually there. If you saw ships in the background, those were real ships. So the realism and dependence of practical effects is a staple with Nolan, and that continues in this one as well. Then there's the filming locations, which are as beautiful and cinematic as they are grand and atmospheric. You got places like Morocco, Greece, and Iceland where they filmed, and the cast had to deal with some really intense weather, including but not limited to heavy winds, rain, and open ocean work. Clearly, Odysseus looking very comfortable, and Matt Damon feeling comfortable would have probably betrayed the whole point. And Nolan just ensured that the characters must have felt in Homer's poem, which was as if the journey itself could eat them all alive before any monster could raise its ugly head. So get ready to experience the scale and weight of the Odyssey's journey, as Nolan is bound to pull you from the edge of your seat and into his movie. But spectacle alone is not all that Nolan's offering you. A lot of the reviews talk about the strong emotional side of the film. Zendaya, who plays Athena, said she felt speechless after seeing it and called it a visceral emotional experience. She said you feel like you're on the Odyssey with Odysseus from beginning to end. And something similar was said by Tom Holland, who basically pointed out the importance of the original text and how the story in Homer's poem was all about love, loyalty, perseverance, failure, facing consequences, and knowing right from wrong. And I think this is the most commendable aspect of the film, because see, we can talk all day about Cyclops, sirens, gods, and IMAX battles, but are these the reasons why Homer's epic survived thousands of years in the first place? No. It survived because it understood a man's desire to go home, and that's what Nolan is bringing you. And it's also the reason why Matt Damon's portrayal of Odysseus is getting a lot of praise. For instance, film journalist Simon Thompson called it Matt Damon's career-best powerhouse performance. Anne Hathaway is also drawing praise as Penelope, and she seems to be the emotional center of the Odyssey, one without which neither the poem nor the film could succeed. Penelope is the woman waiting at home, yes, but she's much more than that. She's also the reason why home feels like home to Odysseus. Early reactions have called Hathaway incredible, and no surprises there, because not only is Ms. Hathaway an excellent actress, Nolan has brought out her craft very well, in at least 2 instances in the past. That's Interstellar and Dark Knight Rises. Then there's Robert Pattinson, who's yet another major talking point among the critics and fans. He plays Antinous, one of the suitors threatening Odysseus' home, and multiple reactions have singled him out as a major scene stealer. Eric Davis calls him conniving, manipulative, and very entertaining, and said Pattinson has gone neck deep into the villainy. But as I said earlier, the craziest thing about this new movie is the horror element, which is something that Nolan really hasn't gotten into, and that's the reason critics simply can't stop talking about it. Collider Steven Weintraub said Nolan embraced the supernatural, while other reactions mentioned some sincerely unsettling sequences, and even a fleshed out horror sequence. And this could be so many things from the trailers like Polyphemus, the dead, the sea, Circe, the sirens, or just men losing themselves to violence and hunger. This is very interesting because Nolan has flirted with fear before, for instance in the final moments of Batman Begins, but he's not usually thought of as a horror director. But you know what? The film critics and fans are not the only ones who have shared their 2 cents on the new movie. The historian Tom Holland, yes, the other one, not the actor Tom Holland, gave one of the most interesting early reactions. He said that he's seen the film twice and called it the best cinematic adaptation of a Greek myth he's ever seen. He also said it honored Homer while making something new out of him, and such a strong compliment coming from historians and classicists is usually not easy to get, especially when the movie has been talked about for not sticking to the source material. And come on, there had to be changes made to the poem because a literal Odyssey adaptation would definitely be slow and feel extremely episodic, and not in a good way. So yeah, based on the early response, the Odyssey is shaping up as one of the year's biggest cinematic events. And that was all in this one, folks. If you liked the video, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Those 2 small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these awesome videos. Stay safe and have a good one.